If you guys want to go ahead and introduce yourselves, I sent you just like your name, what program you represent, and then if you've served, what that experience was like for you. We can just start in order. So Christy, if you want to go first.
Yeah, sure. So hi everyone, my name is Chris. I'm a recruiter for the Peace Corps. And it's funny, I actually lived with a Teach for America person with my first job out of college, and I also worked for AmeriCorps. So I feel like I could talk about all of the institutions here, which I love all of them. It's awesome to be a part of something that includes all of this together. But yeah, so I'm a recruiter for the Peace Corps, and I also served as a Peace Corps volunteer recently from 2018 to 2020 in the Western Highlands of Guatemala. So as you can see in my background here, this is one of my favorite places in the world. It's Tikal, which is an ancient archaeological site near where I served. And yeah, I served in the ag sector, so I was out in the field with Mayan farmers working on sustainable agricultural methodologies. And happy to talk more about that later, but that's just a brief overview of what I did.
Perfect. Christy, you want to go?
Sure. So I am with AmeriCorps, and I served 2 terms as a VISTA. Actually, I served in Cleveland, Ohio, doing community outreach, and then I served with Habitat for Humanity International, doing program development with them. Those were 2011 to 2012 and 2013 to 2014, respectively. And now, after running an AmeriCorps Seniors program for the last 5 years, I recently joined the Southeast Regional Office with AmeriCorps. So I'm the portfolio manager who covers Western Tennessee, including APS Youth Program.
Perfect. Dr. Winters?
Right, thank you. So I'm a professor of classics and director of honors at Austin Peay, and I was asked today to talk about Fulbright, the Fulbright opportunities. Fulbright has been around since the 1950s, was set up by the US government as a means of promoting what I think people would broadly call cultural diplomacy. So the sorts of projects that generally get funded by Fulbright for their research grants are long-term projects by graduate students and some senior researchers. But Fulbright also funds some undergraduate programming, and in particular, they have a program called the Critical Languages Scholarship that sends students for several months to a foreign country to study a language in which they have no experience. And these are critical needs languages like Bengali and this sort of thing. So lots of opportunities there. And yes, I was a Fulbright, I had a Fulbright full fellowship in, well, 100 years ago. But it took me to Greece and allowed me to finish my dissertation to get the primary research done for that. So yes, I can definitely answer questions about how they treat you and what that program is like.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Winters. Edward?
Hey, so I'm Edward, he, him pronouns, and I am currently an AmeriCorps member for a program called College Possible. It's based out of Minnesota, but it's very decentralized, and so there's different locations in a bunch of other places. But I'm currently embedded here at Austin Peay, and I do a bunch of different things, but to kind of keep it, brief, I mostly support first generation and or Pell eligible students in closing that degree divide.
Perfect. And Teal?
Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm Teal Dodgerell. I am on the recruitment team at Teach for America. So similar to Chris, it's really excited to be here with all of you. As I know, the connection obviously with AmeriCorps, and I've had friends and colleagues who've done Peace Corps and Fulbright as well. So I was a 2013 Teach for America Corps member in Memphis, Tennessee, where I taught 8th grade English. And then I spent a number of years teaching in Memphis at the high school level after my time in the Corps, and moved to Orlando, Florida, taught there as well at the high school level, and now I'm on staff. My work is a little bit more internal with the recruitment team, so I usually am doing a lot of kind of strategy and initial outreach, not necessarily always face-to-face with students, so I'm always really excited when I get to participate in opportunities like this. Yeah, I'm excited to just be here and talk a little bit more about the program, both from a Corps member perspective and as a full-time staff member as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. For the questions, you can answer all of them, or you can popcorn them however you want. I'm not going to call on specific people. If you just feel like you want to add something, you can add. So we will get started by, can you just cover what it is that your program's application process is like? So how do you apply? Is there interviews? Is there deadlines? More of the logistical part of getting into your particular programs. Popcorn, anyone?
Well,
I can
sure.
start.
I mean,
Sorry.
go ahead, Teal.
Okay, ours is fairly simple. You just go to, if you go to AmeriCorps.gov, you can see any of our programs. A few of the programs will ask for an additional application or to send it through them, but you can find any of the postings for across the entire country at AmeriCorps.gov and just find what works for you, what's in the field you want to be in or the location. And we do have some relocation support if you do decide to move. I moved from Georgia to Ohio for a term, so that can be very helpful.
Perfect.
Okay, well, if nobody else is going to jump in there. The Fulbright applications generally take quite a while. If you're applying for a full term or full year fellowship, that really begins in the spring with sort of setting up interviews with the local committee, the local Fulbright committee, getting your proposal started and so on. And then the formal application, the deadline for that is generally in September, early October of that year. So if you were applying for 2021, the deadline actually, I think, has just slipped past us. It may still be open a little longer this year because of COVID. So that's for the sort of main Fulbright program, and it does involve a fairly extensive online application and then interviews at the local and, well, a couple of interviews at the local level. The other programs, the critical languages scholarship and the Fulbright grants that are sort of short term, those have a much less complicated process and still would involve coming to see me or one of the other people on the committee, and we'll help you through that. But they have different deadlines throughout the year depending on the time that you want to begin your work. So
Perfect.
I guess I can go next. Don't want to cut anyone off. But yeah, similarly to some of the other organizations out here, the process is, it's simple, it's streamlined, but it still takes a while in the application for the Peace Corps. So you'll go online, you'll find a position that you're interested in on peacecorps.gov. You can apply to a specific posting, or you can apply to serve where needed most, at which point you'll write a motivational statement, you'll get some letters of references, get your resume looking good, and then you'll submit that. So from the time that you click submit to the time that you get on that plane is usually around 9 months. Wow. So it's sort of a lengthy application process. And there's usually just one pretty intensive interview. It's a Skype interview, about an hour long. I think mine was an hour and a half. That's because I like to talk a lot. And yeah, besides that, you will go through a medical clearance process, a legal clearance process, because you will technically be working for the U.S. government. And once you're cleared to serve, then you get on that plane to go to your country of service.
And then I can jump in after that. So for the College Possible application process, once you get the application and everything, I feel like it's a pretty standard application. You fill out your information, you provide a resume, you can provide references, and then afterwards, after you get through it, you will do 1 or 2 interviews depending on how everything's going. One with the Austin Peay folks, and then you will also do another interview with the people from the Minnesota kind of headquarters. Then afterwards, you'll do a background check and things like that because you are working for the government. And then after that, you're good to go.
And I can share a little bit about Teach for America's application process, just for kind of a little bit of clarity and background for anyone who's watching this who isn't really familiar with our program. The process of being a part of Teach for America, you are a core member, so you're actually a full-time salaried teacher that's actually an employee of the school district that you're working in. And Teach for America kind of works as your essentially like certifying body, as well as the organization that provides you with ongoing support, coaching, and development. So just a little clarity there to your program. And a lot of times, sometimes people get a bit confused with other organizations where maybe you're more in kind of a volunteer work, but you are, in our case, a full-time salaried educator in the public school system. So our application process, we have a few rolling deadlines throughout the year. Our next one's actually coming up this Friday on October 16th. And the process itself, the initial application process is actually pretty simple. You can finish it in about an hour or a little bit more than that, depending on how long it takes you to answer a couple short answer questions. But on the initial end, you just upload your resume and 2 short responses. One kind of talking about why you're applying to this program, and then the other one going over a meaningful accomplishment either during your time in undergraduate or graduate school, or in your professional career if you're applying as someone who's already out in the workforce. And then from there, you'll get notified. I believe that it's after a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks. You can see the deadline and date information on our website at teachforamerica.org. But after that, if you're pushed from that initial step onto an in-person, or what we now have actually virtual interviews, you'll attend your interview, and at that point you'll submit letters of recommendation if you make it to that step. And then you'll have a little bit more of a lengthier virtual interview where they'll kind of take you through a couple of different activities. There'll be a one-on-one interview section. And you actually do a sample lesson, which sometimes for some folks can seem really maybe a little bit nerve-wracking, but that's what our recruitment team is really here for, to kind of help support our applicants and help you prepare for that. So after that, during that process, while you're up for your in-person virtual interview, that's also when you'll submit preferences for subject and region. And again, this is a step that your recruiter will really help support and walk you through. And then from that, you find out about your offer. And that actually, while it kind of seems like there are many steps to the process, it all happens fairly quickly. So you would get your kind of initial or final offer about it's like a 2-month process essentially. So like I said, our next deadline is coming up on Friday. And if you were to get through that process, you would get your offer and be in the window to accept or decline it by December 7th. So pretty good. Our final deadline for seniors or for the 2021 core is March 5th. And so if you were to go through that process, you would know your offer by April 19th. So I think it's, you know, a good time frame, especially for students who, you know, are kind of trying to figure out what's going to be their next step. So we definitely have some kind of options for folks who might have different needs during this school year. So.
Perfect. I like what you mentioned at the beginning of your thing, Teal, about your full-time salaried person. And that kind of takes me to our next question. So all 5 of these experiences, while they are alternative things after graduation and are typically involve giving back to the community in some way, shape, or form, they all have different living conditions, pays, experiences, etc. And so for this question, if you could share a little bit about like what life is like in this program. So do you get paid? If so, what does that pay like? What are the hours involved? The contract time? Teal mentioned 2 years for Teach for America, and things like that. Those kinds of logistical things like, am I getting paid? How much? What's life going to be like? Am I going to be provided housing, etc.? Anyone can jump in.
You can kick it off since I just shared. Yeah, so I kind of, you know, already said a little bit about it. It is a 2-year program, so you are in the same region and ideally the same school placement school the whole time. And so you can see a bit more on our website. But we do have 50 different regions across the U.S. We're not actually not in every single state. We have multiple locations in some states, but it kind of varies region to region in regard to the type of scenario you might be teaching in. We do place in public schools, so sometimes that's a traditional public school, sometimes that's a charter school. I've had experience working in both, and all of these schools are serving low-income communities. So we have regions across the U.S. that are more urban settings and more rural settings. And one tool that I always am raving about as a recruitment team member on our website is our region comparison tool, where you can pull different regions and look at them side by side. And so they give you a kind of breakdown of just different things that someone would probably want to know before entering into the workforce in a certain place. So it'll break down kind of the salary differences. You know, obviously, as people are probably pretty aware, teachers make different range of salaries across the U.S. And so I think that's really helpful to be able to see, since Teach for America is not actually the one who's in charge of setting that pay. It is dependent upon your district. The other thing that also varies region to region, some states require you to either have a master's or be in the process of earning one in order to be certified. And so that's something that, you know, prospective applicants would want to look at. Like, so for instance, I was teaching in Memphis. Tennessee did not require you to have a master's, but some of my fellow core members did take the opportunity to leverage a partnership we had with the local university to be able to do that. So you'll also be able to see just the different graduate school partnerships we have within a region to know what's available for you and what might be, you know, a discounted tuition to be able to get that continuing education. And then as far as housing, things like that, it's kind of similar to if you were moving to a new area for a new job, that's really, you know, up to to that person's discretion. However, one thing that I really appreciated about being in Teach for America is that, you know, you're coming to a new place, or if people are already in that region already, like coming into this new working space with a group, with your core. And so Teach for America really does a lot of front end work to get folks connected, whether that's through a Facebook group or like kind of group message thing, to ensure that core members, if they are coming into a new area, you know, they have those connections already, and they can start talking about, like, you know, you want a room together? Can we go in on renting a house or something like that? So while Teach for America is not actually, doing that for you. We do really work hard to make those connections to make that transition easier. And then similar to what I think Christy was sharing, we do have transitional funding available. Sometimes people will qualify for grants. Sometimes that will be a loan like I did. And so that is another benefit of our program. Different regions will potentially be able to offer a financial aid package in order to have folks have an easier transition if they are moving.
Cool, I can go next. Maybe we can just like, you can just like point at the, well, we won't be able to see it, never mind. Just like call it like in some kind of order. Yeah, that doesn't work, never mind. So I guess, yeah, to describe what the Peace Corps' life is, it's pretty hard because it varies widely by what country and what region and even what sector you're working in. But across the board, so I will say that it's a 27-month experience. It's 3 months of training and then 2 full years of service in the country that you serve in. So, it's a chance to create meaningful change in a very tangible way, which I think we all want to do to some extent, like all of these organizations on the call today. It's a chance to immerse yourself in a different culture that may be vastly different than the one that you grew up in. And it's a chance to create lifelong friendships with people who may be very different than you are, which I think is an incredible opportunity. So I guess to describe what life is like is, like I said, impossible. Every day is different. But to just speak to my own experience, so I lived with an indigenous Mayan family in a tiny pueblo, tiny town in the mountains of Guatemala. So it was really incredible. They became like my family. The entire community became like my family. I feel like I was adopted into this community. And, whenever there was a cultural event, they were just like, oh, bring the gringo, bring him, like make sure he's involved. And so I was like, great, I'll do all the things. So, it depends on, what your service is or what your sector is, what country you get placed in, but it will be a very unique experience that I can guarantee. And then in terms of just like what you actually, the specifics of it, like what you get. So the Peace Corps pays for your flight. They provide for your housing. You can either live in a homestay or apartment style, depends on what country that you serve in. And they pay you a living stipend. So you're not gonna like get rich during the Peace Corps. I don't think people do it for that reason. But you live comfortably in the country that you serve in. And the idea is that you're living at the standard of living of the people that you work with. It's sort of an empathy, learning experience type thing. So the idea is obviously not about making money. But that being said, you can rest assured that your needs will be taken care of. So they give you really good healthcare, really good dental coverage, which was important for me because they really like their coffee and sugar and sweet things down there. So I ended up keeping like 7 cavities while I was in the Peace Corps. But they paid for all that, so it was good. And yeah, so besides that, there are tons of transferable skills that you get, and you receive tons of training throughout your time. And yeah, your needs are met, and I'll leave it at that because I'm bleeding into the next questions. But yeah, describe the specifics of it.
So I can hop in here because we have kind of a mix of a setup between Teach for America and Peace Corps. So with AmeriCorps, there's 3 different programs that most people would be looking at. There's NCCC, which is kind of based off the old Civilian Conservation Corps from during the Depression. So if you get accepted to that, you live on a campus with a team. You go through training for different things. We have people out fighting the wildfires. We have people working in national parks. There's a FEMA team. There's teams that go and build with Habitat for Humanity across the country. So you are based on one of those campuses, and then you go out on regular spikes and trainings. And you can come back with just a huge host of different opportunities. But to be an NCCC member, you have to be between 18 and 24. But if you become a team leader, you can be any age. You could be 70 and be a team leader if you want to. And then we have state national programs through like Volunteer Tennessee, things like that. Those are direct service. Habitat for Humanity uses a lot of state national people for construction management, things like that. And those are sometimes full-time, sometimes part-time. You get a stipend. It's based on what county you're serving in. So for all the programs, we have a stipend, but it's all based on what county. And State National and Vista do not offer housing through the program, but sometimes the program you're applying for does have housing as a bonus. It's totally based on the organization you're serving with. And then Vista, which is Volunteers in Service to America, you're doing capacity building. So you're going to be in the office and creating volunteer programs or writing grants or just helping different nonprofits expand their capacity. Those with Peace Corps, you're working in a community to bring people out of poverty. So you're going to be compensated with a living stipend more on that same level. The bonus with Vista is you also, at the end of your service year, can either get money to use towards school, or you can get a kind of a cash bonus if you serve through the whole year. So that is pretty standard, but the pay rate or the living stipend rate, because you're not an employee of the organization, you're not an employee of the federal government, you're a compensated volunteer. It's completely based off county, but if you go to our website, you can also find what the pay rate is for every county. It's out there.
Yeah, and so a lot of what I'm about to say reflects largely what Christy said, because for College Possible, you would be an AmeriCorps member. So for College Possible, specifically at Austin Peay, we work to be very near peers, and so we have housing actually on campus. But if for some reason that doesn't work out, there's also additional compensation if for some reason housing isn't provided. And so we do have a living stipend, and obviously it's not going to be a lot. We're not going to be going crazy with money, but it is enough to make sure that we live comfortably and everything. Day-to-day life, it very much reflects that of a higher education professional. So I have an office here at Austin Peay. I work closely with several other professional staff and faculty members to kind of extend the capacity of existing resources on campus. We do have the Education Award at the end as well. That can go towards either student loans or graduate school. You can put it towards either of those. Yeah, don't think I'm missing anything. So yeah.
I think I'm the only one left at this point. So Fulbright takes pretty good care of their people. They provide round trip airfare, of course, to whatever country you're working in. Room and board. If you're on a Fulbright grant, you have a living stipend. So I found it to be more than comfortable. If you have a spouse or children, they add an additional stipend for those. The Critical Languages Scholarship also covers a trip to Washington, D.C. And your room and board while you're there. That's sort of orientation session before you go off to the country in which you'll be working. But they again cover all your airfare, your room and board, language lessons. Fulbright is very good about giving an additional stipend for language lessons. If you're on a regular Fulbright fellowship, but the critical language place, they take care of getting you into the program and all that. So if you're going to be studying Bengali, they have the application process set up in such a way that you're accepted to a program in India or wherever you're at, in addition to getting accepted to the program through the U.S. Information Agency, what it used to be. So yeah, they take very good care of you, and no complaints at all. sort of lots of little extras, as I think it was Chris D was saying. There are all sorts of sort of cultural things that that they do. That is the Fulbright representative in the country in which you're studying will see that you're well cared for in terms of getting to local cultural events and that kind of thing. They'll put you in touch with locals in your same discipline, and so they're very helpful people overall.
Perfect. So for this next question, very curious about what you found to be the most rewarding part of your experience, but also the most challenging part of your experience. So answering both of those to give some perspective as to what they might get out of it, but also what might be a challenge for them. And we can just go round robin again, so that way we don't have to jump in. And so either Teal or Chris, you want to start?
I can start. Yeah, I think both of the answer to both of those, I think, is a little one and the same. I think that in my experience, being an educator in our public schools is one of the most rewarding experiences I've ever had. It's also been one of the most challenging. I think especially right now, even just talking with some of our current Corps members in, the situation that they're in right now, teaching during COVID, whether that is they're physically in the classroom at schools that have, mandated that they go back, or that they're trying to navigate teaching in a virtual environment. I think that this year, especially, and I guess the latter half of last year, it really is just highlighting the compounding challenges and issues. So, when I think about my own time in the classroom, many of the challenges that I was facing every day was trying to support students and their families with things that in many ways were kind of outside of my control. So just whether that was access to, healthcare, or, even like vision care, or food that was going to sustain them throughout the day, transportation issues, things like that. And then even mental health services, the fact that, the school that I was working in did not have a full-time nurse on campus. And then, our counselors, unfortunately, the, counselor to student ratio is not enough to really be able to support students with some of the things that they may have needed. So I think really all of those challenges made, different things throughout teaching, I think, really difficult. But with that, I think one of the most rewarding things has been was the fact that I was able to, come out of undergraduate, my time in undergraduate, immediately working in a role in which I could see the direct impact I was able to make. And not in a way that was I'm coming in and bestowing my gifts upon, these students or this community. It was really being able to be in a position where I was building really strong relationships with my students and their families and, communities, and learning from other veteran teachers who had been there before me, and really connecting with the school, connecting with the students, and being able to deeply know kind of the nuances of all of the challenges that they were facing, and then use my voice and what I was doing in the classroom to really amplify the work that their communities were already doing. And so I think for me, and other Corps members that I talk to now and other alumni, I think that was one of the most rewarding things. And I say that too because after your 2-year commitment, you can continue to stay in the classroom. You're still an employee of that school. But some of our, then they become alumni. Some of our alumni go into other sectors. And so what I think has been really great about my experience at Teach for America as well is now I have this network of people who are continue to be committed to equity and pursuing like true equity and systemic change in so many different sectors. So I have like a friend who I taught alongside at the high school that I was working with, who's now in med school at Emory, and she's specifically wanting to like go back to her own community and ensure that like Black women are getting the healthcare that they need, because that was an issue that we saw in our community, right? So I think that hopefully all of that answers the question. I truly believe like for those who are looking to make an impact, particularly like in the United States, I do feel like our program allows you to do that immediately in a really real tangible way that I think, truthfully for me personally, has like changed my life forever.
Edward, you want to go next?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Or Christy, it's fine.
So with AmeriCorps, with any of the programs, you know, it's not a traditional job. It's essentially being a full-time volunteer. So that can just be difficult. And working in these parts of the country that just, you know, really need help, the whole mandate is really to help people make America better is really what you're going for. And so that, you know, it can be tough if you're an NCCC and you're working fighting forest fires. Like, that's literally physically a difficult position. But if you're in you know, another AmeriCorps position trying to help raise funds for a homelessness organization, or, you know, helping kids through a mentorship program and things like that, it can be both incredibly disheartening some days, and then other days it's so beautiful that you never want to leave it. I actually had almost completely finished my master's degree when I first joined Vista. And then by the time I finished my second Vista term, I was in a totally different master's program and had transferred my credits, because working in service, like, it had changed my life. I had to work in service. So it, you know, it can be an incredible experience. And if you don't know exactly what you want to do right out of school, it's a great opportunity to find something that you think looks interesting and just try it. You'll get some job experience there, and it's a good opportunity to kind of get your feet wet in the field before you really decide, this is what I'm going to do with my life.
I think for me, there are kind of two things that I really enjoy about working as an AmeriCorps member for College Possible. I think the one that I enjoy the most is that I get to spend all day just talking to students, and I get to share in their success a little bit, and feel like I've helped them get to where they are, or at least help them figure out that they can get there themselves. And that kind of comes with like its own little drawback too, is if there's someone going through a situation that can obviously kind of rub off on you a little bit, like compassion fatigue and stuff like that. That's one of the drawbacks. And then kind of going back to the positives, what I do specifically also prepares me for what I plan on doing after the program itself. So I know at Austin Peay, we've spent a lot of time actually doing professional development alongside our service. So I've had the opportunity to go to higher education conferences. I had the opportunity to present. I didn't, but I had the opportunity. And I also have experience that's going to hopefully set me pretty far ahead of other potential applicants for whenever I start applying for PhD programs soon.
Okay, well, I'll leap in here. It's hard for me to think of a drawback or a downside for a Fulbright. I mean, the greatest joy of having that fellowship is that it allowed me to do my work without distraction. I mean, you don't have to be worrying about teaching a class, or there were no other responsibilities. You're not sitting on any committees or anything else. You just can go in the morning and work as long as you want, and until you can get the job done. So it was great to be able to spend 12-hour days in the library or in the museums, wherever I needed to be, just working. Yeah, I don't know how else to say it except that. I mean, other sort of fun sides of being involved in that, because of Fulbright's sort of status as a program of the government, usually get to meet the ambassador, the American ambassador in whatever country you're in. They'll arrange some nice sort of side trips, overnight trips to places, and that sort of thing. So those were all a great pleasure. And yeah, I would have said when I had it, the difficulty, the only downside was that you were sort of outside of the job market. You were a little bit distant from since you're in another country, you feel a little disconnected from the job search process. But nowadays with Skype and all that's really not much of a factor anymore. So hard to think of a downside to this one.
Awesome. So I can go next. I think I'm the last one. So I would say the coolest part, well, my project work was really great. Like, I got to do a number of different grant projects and start initiatives that I feel like really made a difference in my community, which is one of the most important things to me. But beyond that, I just really loved like just getting integrated into the community, just being part of this tiny Mayan community, getting to know every single person in this town on a first name basis. Learning 2 different languages. I learned Spanish and I learned an indigenous language called Quiche, which sounds wild. You should Google it and watch some YouTube videos of Quiche. It sounds like nothing else. But yeah, just taking part in cultural events and having enough stories to fill a book. Like, there's so many just really random situations where I'm like, how did I get into or I probably shouldn't be in this situation, but it's happening, So I think those are the things that you remember at the end of the day and will make it all worth it. I would say in terms of challenges, the Peace Corps will present you with challenges that you will just not face in the United States. So, maybe you can't get to the community because a mudslide happened and destroyed the road that you would take to get there. So you're not going to that community today. Or like maybe the Guatemalan municipal government is embezzling funds, so they don't have the funds to pay your coworkers. So, you don't have coworkers for this stretch of a few months. So you have to problem solve and like figure out ways to still make an impact, even when presented with challenges that just seem ridiculous. And yes, I can. I'm responding to Tim's question in the chat. But yeah, hopefully that illustrates a little bit what life might be like as a Peace Corps volunteer.
Perfect. And so my last formalized question before we see if the students in here have any questions in addition to that. And actually it's funny because Edward and Timothy kind of touched on this of what do you feel like you got out of your experience that will help you or has helped you in a further job search? Like, what skills have you gained through this experience that, like Edward said, potentially has put you ahead of the curve because of this particular experience?
I can kick us off. I feel like I might be at the, because we're going in our pattern. I would say a couple of the things that for me stick out. I think just the experience and practice of communicating effectively across lines of difference with people, and really being able to listen and appreciate other people's perspectives and kind of collectively work to achieve a shared goal. I think for myself, when I was kind of transitioning out of the classroom and I was looking at different job descriptions of different things, and I really just thought back on all of the skills that I had acquired when I was teaching, and I really feel like teachers can do anything. I spent a lot of time writing communication stuff for my school, or my classroom newsletter, or communicating with parents. I spent a lot of time analyzing data and making strategic decisions. The agility I built and strengthened throughout teaching, 6 periods a day of like 25, sometimes 25, sometimes as large as like 35 student classrooms, and having to deeply know in each individual child, and then make, quick decisions on my feet when something wasn't necessarily going the way I had planned. I think all of those kind of soft skills really, I really honed while I was in the classroom. And so I truly believe that, some of the things that I took out of it, and I'm now seeing in my other working, in my other roles that I've worked in from that, I think really has been that ability to like connect, build strong relationships, and just be agile and be able to focus on the goal. I know earlier I mentioned, at any time there's always like all of these things that you can't necessarily change yourself, but you can know, kind of like what Chris said, you can figure out what the thing is that you can do to be able to at least push towards some sort of progress. And I feel like that is one of the major skills that I got during my time with Teach for America and in the classroom.
Cool, I can go next. So I would say in terms of how it boosted my career, I could talk for an hour about it, so I'm gonna try to like squish it into like a minute or so. But it gives you just a massive amount of transferable skills working for the Peace Corps in so many different ways. So now I'm almost trilingual, which I could not have said beforehand. I was unilingual. I don't know what you even call it, just one language. Before that, I gained a ton of grant writing skills. I have a ton of experience in sustainable international development now, which is where I want my career to go towards in the future. So it was a huge launching pad for me. And then, beyond that, for interviews, now there's not a single interview question that the Peace Corps hasn't just imminently prepared me to answer. Like when they're like, describe a challenge that you've overcome. I'm like, all right, like, do you have an hour? Because so it gives you a ton of transferable skills. And then there's some also really concrete benefits that it gives you for career development. So it gives you access to something called the Coverdell Fellowship Program, which gives you specific access to scholarships that only Peace Corps volunteers can get for graduate school. And then it also gives you this thing called non-competitive eligibility, which Vista also does. I'm sure Christy will talk about that. Just basically puts you at the front of the line for government jobs, gives you access to positions that only people with this non-competitive eligibility get, and really gives you a foot in the door to the US government if that's something that you're interested in. So to highlight just quickly how this worked in my own life, I got back from the Peace Corps. I was actually evacuated because of the pandemic. So I got back during a global pandemic when no one was hiring, with no job, no home, no nothing, kind of freaking out inside, But I used these benefits that the Peace Corps gave me to get a pretty decent government job with good benefits, and then also get into a pretty prestigious grad program, and then have most of it paid for through the Peace Corps. So could not have done either of those two things without having served in the Peace Corps. And I'll stop talking now.
So to kind of continue off that, depending on what position you take with NCCC, State National, Vista, the job training will be different. And, so you can really tailor it towards what you want to do. If you want to do environmental work, then, NCCC could be great because you're going to be boots on the ground, or Vista could be wonderful because then you'll see how to do more of the higher level eco work. For me, I did community outreach and then I did programmatic development, both of which gave me some amazing experience. I also got to use it as my grad school internship, so I didn't have to go do another internship. A lot of grad programs, just like with Teach for America, they'll have a partnership, so maybe you can get course credit or you can skip application fees, or different instances like that. Non-competitive eligibility status for federal jobs is great, because if you've ever filled out a federal application, they are very, very long and can be very, very complicated. And if you are in school for a year after your AmeriCorps term, you can actually extend that non-competitive eligibility status. And then, of course, if you're looking for a job with someone like AmeriCorps, we like to hire people that have gone through the program. And since our programs have been around for over 60 years, there's a huge alumni organization that people that have served can, they share job postings in your area, things like that. So there's a really robust alumni organization as well. So it can be, depending on what you put into it, will depend on what you get out of it.
Because I can join in after that. So a couple of skills that I've picked up from being an AmeriCorps member for College Possible. Just heard some weird noise.
If you're looking to, it's really able to be that you full prospective universities. They want to know that your ideas are good, that they're sound, that you're you're going to work on your scholarship. If you get one of these Fulbright awards, then that's pretty much you come to a application with pretty much a proven track record for being able to get a grant. Of course, there's the chance of applying for it, as everybody has said. I mean, just filling out those application forms and dealing with the interviews, very helpful. And then, the bonus of being able to deepen some knowledge of the local language. So, I mean, I had already knew modern Greek when I went over there, but I was able to sort of just having a year in country, of course, is going to, deepen your knowledge that way. That opened the door for me to teach modern Greek as well as ancient. So that was helpful for the university I went to first, especially, and has been helpful throughout my career. So yeah, I think lots of good benefits for that. And as everybody else has said, connections, the networking that you get from being a part of an organization like this is remarkable. All sorts of post-fellowship conferences and linked meetups with other Fulbrighters in your discipline and so on. It's enormously helpful.
Okay, so I will go last. So I've picked up a few different skills as an AmeriCorps member for College Possible here at Austin Peay. A lot of them you can really apply to higher education, or at least that's the kind of framework I'm going into. But you can definitely apply these in a lot of places. So I've picked up how to analyze an audience for communication. So I do a lot of, I guess, code switching. That's probably the best way to describe it, because I would talk with a lot of students day in and day out, and that's like the bulk of my job. And obviously, I wouldn't talk to a student the same way I would talk to maybe the dean of a college. I would probably use language that would make the dean of the college just think I'm crazy. But so I've learned to kind of take care of how I craft messages and how I frame messages. I've also learned how to analyze problems. So I can analyze problems quantitatively, qualitatively. I can even take like a narrative-based approach to analyzing problems. I often look at success metrics for students and figure out how to address those metrics and what to do with those metrics rather. I've also done things such as community asset mapping. So figuring out what is available in a community, and I'm pretty sure all of us have probably done that to some degree. It's just analyzing what's available in a community and how we could utilize that to our advantage. There's also different skills like leadership. This is my second term of service here, so I've taken on several leadership capacities such as organizing community-based outreach. So that could be like, you start an email campaign, texting campaigns, as well as events for, small, medium, or large audiences. I've also learned how to, just like a couple of just general life skills, like emotional intelligence or cultural responsiveness. And probably the most important is learning how to sustainably engage, so that I'm also taking care of myself while I help take care of others, so that I can continue to take care of others.
Perfect.